Welcome to Stream and Record Video with OBS, Episode 1, in which we talk about what is OBS and how do I get started.
My name is James. I'm a digital services technician at Richmond Public Library, and I'll be one of your hosts.
And I'm your other host, and my name is Deeth. I'm also a digital services technician with Richmond Public Library. We've been using OBS now for a while for a lot of our online programs. So we wanted to share what we've learned with you. So James, why don't you tell us what is OBS and why should I care?
Well, OBS is Open Broadcasting Software, which is a very fancy way of saying you can take video from many sources on your computer, so from many different windows and programs, and you can put them all into one place so that you can broadcast it over the internet through your favorite streaming media for the world to see.
Do I have to use it for streaming?
You don't. If you want to record something to put on YouTube, if you want to record something even to share with family, it's a really great way of just creating content by putting a whole bunch of different sources together.
Cool.
And we'll talk about sources a little bit later on today.
Yes, we will.
So OBS OBS is Open Broadcast Software, but there's different versions of it. Can you tell us what the different versions are?
Sure. So there are two main versions. And so one is Open Broadcaster OBS Studio, and the other is Streamlabs OBS. And they are both based on they're both open source, they're both based on the same code, and they are, I guess, updated at different rates, and they have a little bit different focus. So OBS Studio, the original, it just, it's the most quickly updated. It doesn't use as much power from your computer, and I'll link this page into the description of the video when we upload this. But and it's very good at supporting all the different streaming platforms. Although while Streamlabs OBS, I don't think it used to support Mac OS and Linux. It seems to now. So I think that's a recent update. So that's one less variation between them. OBS Studio has fewer plugins and doesn't support Windows XP if you really need to go back that far. And you can't use audio files as sources, which I'm not actually sure if that's true now. I think that might be out of date. So Streamlabs OBS is a little bit easier to set up maybe, has a built-in chat, and it has a lot more plugins for it, but it also requires a lot more from your CPU. So you need to have a faster computer basically for that. Other than that, they are both based on exactly the same software and the same code. So either one is going to do what you need, and they really dominate the streaming ecosystem. Like pretty much all streamers, as far as I know, are using one or the other of these.
And which version of it are we using right now?
We're using OBS Studio. And
Because
that's the main one we'll focus on.
And I think people would find it interesting that I'm at one branch of Richmond Public Library. You're at a totally different branch.
Yeah.
And we're able to put this together using OBS with also using Windows from Zoom.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of software going on here because we've got LibreOffice to show the titles. We've got Zoom going on. It's piping your video in from Zoom and then piping the result back through Zoom so you can see it using OBS Virtual Camera. What else? We've got the browser going on with Firefox. And then OBS is just stitching it all together.
And which programs have you done at the library that you use the software with, in case people want to look at the programs and see how it turned out?
Yeah, so I've done a bunch of programs now for Scratch, teaching Shimmy animation software, teaching let's see, we did at your library you can, what's the first, at your library you can, oh my goodness, blanking on it now. Basically everything I do right now, I'm using OBS Studio for.
Yeah, and I've put together all the Dungeons and Dragons resource guides that we've been doing as well, using OBS software.
Right, that was the other one. Yeah, it was actually at your library you can play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
And it was, and I also did some guides for pre-teens for their games to play online.
Yeah, and anybody that's streaming using Twitch as well, you can use the Twitch software that Twitch makes, but OBS can also be used, and it's quite easy to use.
Yeah, you can plug in your streaming key for Twitch or Facebook Live or YouTube, whatever their live version is, and then stream directly from it, or you can record like we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so I guess the next step is to show you how do you get it.
So how do we get OBS, Steve?
Glad you asked. So I'm going to switch back to the browser here, and this is OBS Studio. And again, I'll put the link into the description below this video. Just pick your platform. I right now am on Mac OS, and it's going to take a few minutes to download. It's pretty big. And they have lots of information. They've got a quick start guide, an overview for it. There are forums where you can ask questions, or you can hop on Discord and ask questions. Actually, that downloaded pretty quick. So now it has downloaded and opened in a virtual disk, and you can just drag that software over to applications. I'm not going to do that because I already have it there. And it used to be a separate download to get the virtual camera, but that's now part of OBS on all platforms. For a while it was only on, it was separate, and then it was separate except on Windows, and now it's just built in on all of them. And that lets you use the output from OBS as a camera for other software. So right now, James is seeing what I'm recording because I'm piping the output from OBS back into Zoom through the virtual camera. So then once you fire it up, it's going to spend a few minutes configuring itself to your system, seeing how fast it can run, what your window size is. You can plug in your streaming keys at that point, and then you're ready to go. So using OBS, it's a bit of a learning curve at first, but not too bad. And the main thing to figure out with it is sources and scenes. Do you want to tell us a little bit, James, about sources and scenes?
Sure. We're going to go more into detail of sources and scenes in future episodes. So really, I'm just going to give a really brief explanation of what they are. Sources are basically where your information is coming from. So for example, Deeth and I, one of the sources we're using is Zoom, because we have a Zoom window open. Another source might be Firefox. If you're using this to stream games, your source might be your PS4 or other other gaming engine, whatever you're using. And that's what a source is. It can be images, it can be video, it can be sound, pretty much anything like that. And scenes are a way of really easily transitioning between different collections of sources. So you can set up one scene for your intro music, if you have an intro video, and then click on scene 2, that would go to your interview like this. And then if you wanted to have a closing sequence, say closing music and credits and whatnot, you could have scene 3 for that. Or you could have a special scene that is only going to be for your for your Firefox window, so that you can show some sort of software. And it's just, again, just a really easy way of organizing collections of scenes, or of sources rather. So you have scenes that organize how your video is going to go, and then inside of those scenes, you have your sources of what those scenes are going to look like.
And I can't switch between the scenes and sources right now because I'm actually showing you my view of OBS right now. But you can see that we have we're in a scene called OBS in OBS, so I can show it. And we have an OBS view, which captures the OBS window. We have some audio input, so we can capture our voices. Actually, the built-in camera and background I have turned off, right? So I can actually remove those. There, because I copied this from another scene. And then we're actually, as a source, we're using a different scene so that I have this view of James and I. And that's actually to cover up, because usually if I show OBS in OBS, is what we get is this infinite window of OBS, smaller and smaller versions of OBS in itself. So I'm just kind of covering that up with a different scene because you can use an entire scene as a source in another scene. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And then we'll go into, in future talks, we'll go into how to, if you've created something in one scene that you really like a source in one scene, you can copy and paste that same source into another scene, and you can duplicate sources as well. So there are really easy shortcuts to programming this software.
Yeah, it's very powerful. We've been learning as we go along and adding different tools and tricks to our toolbox. And so we'll get to share some of those with you, and then we will go from there. Thank you, James.
Well, thank you, Deeth, for having me on your first episode, and I look forward to co-hosting all the future episodes with you.
Yeah, we will talk more soon. All right, thank you for coming, and I hope you've learned something interesting about OBS. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.